Emma had always dreamed of something bigger. In the quiet town where she grew up in Brazil, life moved slowly, predictably. Her world was filled with family dinners, neighborhood chatter, and the sound of Portuguese flowing effortlessly all around her. But even as a child, Emma felt a pull toward something distant, something different. American movies and music were more than entertainment to her. They were windows into a new world. She would watch her favorite films over and over, not just for the stories, but to catch the rhythm of the English language, to understand how words dance together in a way so different from her own. She'd sit in her room late into the night, repeating lines from movies, trying to mimic the accents, the tones, the expressions. Sometimes, she felt silly talking to herself in front of a mirror. Other times, she felt powerful, as if with every phrase she learned, she was getting closer to a new version of herself. But no matter how hard she tried, speaking fluently never came easily. She could read and write decently enough, but when it came to real conversations, her words got stuck. Her tongue felt heavy, and her mind scrambled to translate thoughts quickly. Still, Emma kept trying. She joined online English forums, watched videos with subtitles, and practiced with anyone who would listen. When she found out she had been accepted to a university in California, it felt like all her hard work had paid off. She had made it, but alongside the excitement, fear crept in. What if she couldn't keep up with the lectures? What if people didn't understand her accent? What if she didn't understand them? The journey to the United States was long, filled with layovers, immigration lines, and the hum of announcements in English that she only half understood. When she finally arrived, California felt surreal. The sky seemed bigger, the air smelled different, and the streets buzzed with activity. People spoke fast, laughed loudly, and seemed so confident. Emma felt small but determined. Her first day at the university was a whirlwind of new faces, buildings, and names. She walked through the campus with a map in one hand and nerves tangled in her stomach. She practiced her introduction over and over in her head. "Hi, I'm Emma. I'm from Brazil. Nice to meet you." It was simple, but it still felt scary to say aloud. When she walked into her first class, she hesitated at the door, then took a deep breath and stepped inside. The room was already half full. Students were chatting, some looking at their phones, others flipping through notebooks. She found an empty seat near the middle and sat down quietly. Her hands were cold, her heart pounding in her chest. The professor walked in and smiled warmly at the class. "Welcome, everyone," he said. "Let's go around and introduce ourselves. Just your name and where you're from." Emma's turn came sooner than she wanted. She stood up slowly, trying not to shake. "Hi," she began, her voice soft. "I'm Emma. I'm from Brazil." The professor nodded. "Welcome, Emma. We're glad you're here." A few students clapped politely. Emma sat down quickly, cheeks burning, but there was a tiny spark of relief in her chest. She had spoken. It was just one sentence, but she had done it. That evening, she sat on her dorm bed, staring out the window. The campus lights glowed in the distance, and the sound of voices and music floated in through the open window. She felt overwhelmed. Everything was new: the language, the people, the expectations. But at the same time, she felt something else: possibility. She was here. She had made it this far. And even if she stumbled, even if she struggled, she wasn't going to give up. In her notebook, she wrote down the sentence she had spoken in class. She underlined it twice. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was a start. Then she turned the page and began to write new sentences. One she wanted to say, one she was scared to say. Her handwriting was careful, each word a small act of courage. Later that night, as she brushed her teeth in the shared bathroom, another girl smiled at her. "Hey, I liked your accent. Are you from South America?" Emma smiled back, heart beating a little faster. "Yes," she said. "Brazil." The girl nodded. "Cool. I'm from Texas. If you ever want help with English or anything, just let me know." Emma thanked her, surprised and touched by the kindness. As she walked back to her room, she felt a little less alone. She knew the road ahead would be hard. She knew there would be moments of embarrassment, of confusion, of frustration. But she also knew something else now. She didn't have to be perfect. She just had to keep going. This was just the beginning. Every morning, Emma woke up with the same thought. Keep going. The early days at the university had been tough, but she had made a promise to herself that she would not give up, no matter how hard things became. She knew the only way to truly succeed in this new country was to face her fears head-on, and the biggest of them all was speaking English confidently. Each interaction, each sentence spoken in class, each question asked at the grocery store became a small battle she chose to fight. She started to build a routine around her learning. After classes, she would head to the library, not just to study her course materials, but to immerse herself in English. She borrowed novels, self-help books, and anything that could help her improve. She kept a notebook with her at all times, writing down new words and expressions she came across during the day. Whenever she didn't understand something, she looked it up and practiced using it in a sentence. She wasn't just studying for school anymore. She was studying for her life. One afternoon, while walking through the Student Union building, Emma noticed a flyer on the wall. It was an invitation to join the university's English Conversation Club. It met twice a week and welcomed international students who wanted to practice English in a relaxed setting. Her first instinct was to walk past it. She imagined sitting in a circle with strangers, struggling to find the right words while everyone waited for her to speak. But then she remembered how far she had already come. If she wanted to get better, she had to take every opportunity. She tore the flyer down and put it in her bag. The next day, she walked into the meeting room with her heart pounding. About 15 students were already there, chatting and laughing. Some spoke with confidence, others hesitated. Emma sat at the edge of the group, listening closely. When it was her turn to speak, she stumbled a little, her voice quieter than she wanted it to be. But no one laughed. No one corrected her harshly. They nodded, smiled, and responded kindly. It was the first place where she felt safe to make mistakes. Week by week, Emma felt herself improving. Her vocabulary grew, and her sentences flowed more naturally. She began to laugh during conversations, add details to her stories, and even ask questions in return. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it began to loosen its grip. Speaking English became less of a challenge and more of a habit. Then came the announcement that made her stomach twist in knots. Her professor stood at the front of the classroom and said, "Your next assignment will be a group presentation. You'll work in teams of 4 and present your topic in front of the class in 2 weeks." Emma's hand gripped her pen tightly. The word presentation echoed in her mind. Public speaking had always been intimidating, but doing it in English felt almost impossible. She glanced around the room, already imagining the judgment in her classmates' eyes if she made a mistake. Later that day, her assigned group met in the campus cafe. They introduced themselves and began brainstorming topics. To her surprise, the group was friendly and open. When it came time to decide who would speak during the presentation, Emma expected to stay in the background, maybe handle the slides or help write the script. But Jason, one of her teammates, looked directly at her. "You speak clearly," he said. "I think you'd be great as the lead speaker." Emma's eyes widened. "Me?" she asked, trying to hide her panic. Jason nodded. "Yeah, I've seen you participate in class. You're better than you think." She wanted to refuse. She wanted to say no and let someone else take the pressure. But something inside her said this was her moment. If she could do this, maybe she'd stop doubting herself so much. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll try." The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest she had ever faced. Every evening after finishing her homework, she practiced her part of the speech. She stood in front of the mirror, memorizing her lines, adjusting her pronunciation, and working on her pace. She recorded herself on her phone and listened back, correcting mistakes and rewriting parts that sounded awkward. She timed herself to stay within the limit. She even practiced in front of her roommate, who gave her tips on body language and eye contact. Each practice session felt like a step forward, but fear still lingered. The night before the presentation, she barely slept. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, repeating her opening sentence over and over in her head. The next morning, she dressed carefully and arrived at class early. Her group gathered near the front, organizing their notes and setting up their presentation slides. Emma could feel the adrenaline in her veins, making her hands tremble. Jason smiled at her and said, "You've got this." She nodded, though her heart was racing. When their group was called up, she walked to the front of the class with the others. The room fell silent. She took a deep breath, looked at her classmates, and began to speak. To her own surprise, the words came out just as she had practiced. Her voice was steady, her sentences clear. As she moved through the presentation, she saw nods of understanding from the audience. The fear didn't disappear, but it didn't control her anymore. She reached the final point and closed the presentation with confidence. They received a round of applause. Emma smiled, feeling light and proud. She had done more than present a project. She had faced her fear and taken control of her voice. The classroom felt warmer than usual. Emma sat at her desk, her hands still tingling from the adrenaline of the presentation. Her group had just finished, and her part, the lead speaker's role, had gone better than she had ever imagined. She could still hear the echo of applause in her ears. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real, and it was hers. She kept her expression calm, but inside, something had shifted. The fear that had followed her for so long, the constant self-doubt and hesitation, had loosened its grip. For the first time since arriving in the United States, she felt like she belonged. When the class ended, her teammates congratulated her one by one. Jason gave her a thumbs up and said, "You nailed it. I told you you'd be great." Emma laughed nervously, still not used to compliments in English. She thanked them all, then walked out into the bright afternoon sun. The breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and blooming trees, and for once, she wasn't rushing to escape her nerves. She walked slowly, letting the warmth of the day soak in. Later that evening, she sat on her dorm bed, her laptop open in front of her, the same notebook where she had once written down simple phrases now filled with complex sentences, small victories, and personal reflections. She flipped back to the first page where she had written, "Hi, I'm Emma. I'm from Brazil." That sentence, once so frightening, now seemed small and distant, a memory of who she used to be. She smiled at the thought. She wasn't just learning English anymore. She was living in it, thinking in it, finding her voice through it. Over the next few weeks, Emma noticed changes in herself. In class, she raised her hand more often, not just when she was sure of the answer, but even when she had a question. She stopped writing out full scripts before conversations and started trusting her instincts. At the grocery store, she asked for help without rehearsing the question first. At coffee shops, she chatted casually with the baristas. The fear that had once made every sentence feel like a test had faded into something manageable. It was still there, occasionally whispering doubts, but it no longer controlled her. One afternoon, she got an email from her English professor. He wanted to meet with her to talk about a writing competition hosted by the university's international program. She walked into his office nervous, unsure of what to expect. He greeted her with a smile and pointed to a chair. "Emma," he said, "I've been impressed by your progress. Not just your English, but your confidence. You've come a long way in a short time." She looked down, trying not to blush. "Thank you," she said softly. "There's a short story competition coming up," he continued. "It's for international students to share their experiences. I think you should enter." Emma hesitated. "A story? About me?" "About anything," he said. "But I think your journey would inspire others. You have a voice worth hearing." She nodded slowly, her heart already racing with ideas. That night, she sat at her desk for hours, typing and deleting, writing and rewriting. Her story wasn't perfect, but it was honest. She wrote about the fear of arriving in a new country, the loneliness, the embarrassment of making mistakes, and the slow, quiet victories that followed. She wrote about the conversation club, the group presentation, and the first time someone said they liked her accent. She didn't write to win, she wrote to remember, to prove to herself that she had changed. A month later, she received another email. She had won second place. Her story would be published in the university's international magazine, and she was invited to read it aloud at a student event. The thought of reading in front of a crowd made her stomach twist, but she said yes. Not because she was fearless, but because she knew she could handle fear now. The night of the event, she stood backstage with her printed story in hand. Her name was called, and she walked to the microphone under soft stage lights. The room was filled with students and professors. She looked out at the audience, took a deep breath, and began to read. Her voice was steady, her words clear. She didn't rush. She let each sentence breathe, let each emotion settle into the room. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, followed by warm applause. She stepped off the stage, feeling lighter than she ever had before. That night, walking back to her dorm, she looked up at the sky. The stars were scattered across the black canvas, familiar yet new. She thought of the girl who had arrived months earlier, scared and unsure. That girl was still a part of her, but now she was joined by someone braver, someone who had faced challenges and grown stronger with each one. Emma had come to America to study, but she had found more than books and classes. She had found her voice. Not a perfect one, not always fluent, but real and honest and hers. And that, more than anything else, was how she proved herself.